Thanks, Wes, for the amazing introduction. And thank you all for being here, despite being the last talk and evening. I try not to disappoint you, and let's get started. So I'll be speaking about software supply chain security today. And before we get started, just a quick introduction about me. I'm a senior security architect at NBD till a couple of days ago, and I turned out to be a full-time freelancer. And I'm passionate about DevSecOps, cloud-native security primarily. And I have done some Kubernetes-related certifications as well. And I'm a speaker and trainer at multiple international security conferences across the globe, including Black Hat, DEF CON, Hack in the Box, and few others. So first, I want to make sure I set the expectations right. So what to expect from this presentation? It's going to be quick. I'll not take much of your time. So I just want to make sure to explain about the seriousness of software supply chain security and why you should consider about it. So let's start with a couple of recent hacks so you'll get a better idea on why it's important. So I'm pretty sure most of you might have used Node.js applications. And these are the two famous packages that got sabotaged by the own developer. They introduced malicious code into it and released the updates that broke in thousands of applications. Just to give the stats, you can see weekly downloads of Faker package were around 2.7 million downloads. And similarly, for colors, it is 20.7 million downloads, which is super huge. And as you can see, Faker package is being used by around 2,547 dependent packages. So Faker is affected, 2,600 subsequent packages are affected. Similarly, for colors, it is being used by 20,142 packages. And another hack is related to the Python package, where it explains about SSH decorate library, in which the attacker or the developer is directly stealing your SSH private keys. Once you install this package, your SSH keys are gone. And there is another technique called typo squatting. It's a kind of brand jacking where they try to make sure the names are quite similar to the famous ones. And often people misinterpret it with the different names. This is a package of PyPy Coloroma. This is the actual package, COLOR, which is often used in the US. And COLOUR is the color alternative that is used by the other people across the globe. So the attackers have released a fake package called Coloroma with the U in it. And they have embedded a malware dropper in it. So once you install this specific package, it downloads a malware onto your system, which is just a VB script. So most of the times, your antivirus might not even detect it. So what is that doing? So once you have this malware on your system, it replaces, whenever you copy a Bitcoin address, it will take the Bitcoin address and replace it with the attacker's Bitcoin address. Since it's a crypto world, there is no backseas. Once you transfer it, it's gone. And it's hard to identify these kind of things. And this is the classic example of Log4j, in which thousands of applications across the world got affected. But I won't be going into the details, but I would like you to observe the timelines. December 1st is when the first indication of exploit in the wild happened. And on December 6th, silently, the Log4j team tried to release a patch without disclosing the vulnerability. But on December 9th, it got exploded on Twitter, and people started sharing public exploits that anyone can use. And on December 10th, they released an official CVE saying, OK, there is an issue. But there was no patch. The first patch happened on December 13th. So if you see the timelines, from December 1st to December 13th, the attackers have been exploiting it continuously. And there was no direct fix released by the developers because it's an open source package. It's not being used by a specific company or maintained by a company. There were only 2 developers who maintained this huge library. And since it got very famous because of this attack, all the security researchers across the globe started looking at Log4j. And on December 14th, there were 2 more vulnerabilities. December 16th, 2 more. December 17th, 1, and so on. So, and some more hacks in the past 2 years. You can see the extensive list, like PHP, Golang, and Homebrew. I'm sure around 50% of the people might be using Mac OS here, and even Homebrew was affected because of supply chain attacks. And you want to know more? There is an amazing GitHub repository where all the hacks have been mentioned, and I have added the reference over here. So why does these attacks happen? What's the primary reason for these attacks? This is my personal opinion. I believe it's because the attacker knows about your system better than you do. You don't invest your time to look into what things you're running. What are the versions you're running? Are they outdated? Are they updated? Is it properly configured? Attacker loves that. He invests more time than you. That's why they catch these vulnerabilities before you. So there is a research done by Wiz and EY after the Log4j attack happened. And even after 10 days of releasing the patch, only 45% of their companies patched this thing. Around 55% of the companies did not patch it. So why do you think that didn't happen? Why do you think the people are not patching their system? Is this because they're negligent? They want to get hacked? They want to lose their reputation? Customers? No, no, none of it is the reason. The pure reason is because they don't know what to look for. They don't know what they have in their systems. They don't have a categorizations of the assets on their system and what things they are running. And after these kind of attacks, multiple people have come up with different strategies to tackle supply chain attacks. And one of them is generation of SBOMs, software bill of materials. I'm sorry for the font size. I just wanted to show the entire screenshot. So this is a SBOM for Nginx Docker image, where it extracts all the packages with the specific versions running on your Docker image. And it generates an JSON format or CycloneDX format of this thing. So you can have this stored in a different format, or you can make sure you have all this information embedded into a software or collections to make sure what kind of versions you're running and have continuous monitoring in place. And minimize the use of external plugins. There are often, for the ease of use, we tend to use external plugins. And even VS Code, many of you might be using it. Multiple of their plugins are hacked recently because they were never meant to be for public use. They launch it, they wait for the people to use it, and once millions or billions of people are using it, they embed malware in it. And maybe with the next update, they try to remove it off. So as much as possible, try to minimize the use of external plugins and harden your build environment, which is very important. Make sure your environment or the pipelines that are part of your core workflow are secure, are protected. And if you are using Kubernetes or Docker, try to use distro-less images because it will reduce the attack surface by a lot. And make sure to monitor your network traffic closely because most of the times attackers love to have persistent access. So if you have a proper visibility on all the active connections and the previous connections that happen to your system, you'll be able to see, OK, this is not the endpoint I should be getting a request from. Why am I getting? And there are multiple public repositories that are available which will say the list of blacklisted domains. So if you are getting a request from that, then maybe you can identify these kind of things. And make sure to validate the source of downloads and validate all the checksums before downloading. Just don't download blindly. And if you are having your own internal projects, which most of you do, in that case, you can use Notary or Cosign to sign your artifacts and push it to your registries. So whenever you're deploying them, you can validate the signature. And if it is being deployed from somewhere else, you know it's not the one you want to install. And defense in depth. Don't underestimate the power of defense in depth. Most of the people don't like to do this thing because it's hard. And they'll be like, if the attacker comes to my Kubernetes cluster, anyway, I'm doomed. What's the point of adding all these additional controls? But it will really help you a lot in different kinds of things. And there are some other controls like having best DevSecOps practices or looking for secrets in your code to make sure you're not leaking something, SCA, SAS, DAS, TAS, and a lot more. So this is my thoughts on software supply chain security. It is purely an open source security because 96% of the software in today's world is open source. Even the closed source products, they use open source internally. And most of the software used by others is definitely not updated, which is clearly an issue. And after these kind of numerous attacks, There are multiple communities that started working towards these things, and we have Open Source Security Summit, and NSA has released their own supply chain security guide. OpenSSF has started something. JFrog has released Piracia to have a decentralized secure package network, and Google even started open source bug bounty, where they're giving up to 32,000 USD if you find critical vulnerabilities. And they even invested 30 million already to work towards open source security, and as a phase 2, they are looking to fundraise $150 million. So to conclude, as I have mentioned, supply chain security is open source security, and defense in depth, best DevSecOps practices, hardened configurations, authentic deployments, and mainly having visibility on what you're having in your systems will definitely help you to prevent these attacks. Not 100%. I can't assure you that. And like I have mentioned, it's inevitable. You are using someone else's products, and they can be wrong. There can be some issues with it. Be ready for an apocalypse. And that's it. You can reach out to me on Twitter or LinkedIn, and that's my website.
Awesome. Thanks, Rewanth. Any questions? Any questions for Rewanth?
Yeah, or I'll be around, so in case if we don't want to waste everyone's time.
Oh, no worries. I mean, especially if there's something on the security side. Yeah.
Thanks for the presentation. I have a question. If I have 2 applications in the same cluster, so what is the best way to secure the east-west traffic?
The best way would be to start with the network policies, but it's very hard when you already have an established environment. If you already have hundreds of applications running, it's hard to map the network traffic. So in that case, you need to get a tool to make sure it monitors your traffic for maybe 2 weeks or 2 months. And it creates a network graph saying, OK, all these connections are happening from namespace A to namespace B. And using that, you can generate a network policy of your own. And initially, don't try to block everything. Try to monitor it. And in case if some unexpected connection is happening, instead of blocking, you can say, OK, let me log it to somewhere, send it out to Slack or Microsoft Teams. And you can keep on analyzing. And once you have more information, it's better to do the complete preventive.
Is there like a firewall to secure the traffic, east-west traffic between the containers?
Yeah, they do have, because whenever the east-west traffic is happening between the clusters, you can definitely have these controls in place to make sure they are authenticated. Most of the times when you have separate clusters, the requests might be unauthenticated as well. So this might help, and you can make sure you are adding the source from this specific thing. So instead of using a complete firewall, it's better to use the cloud-native solutions available, starting with the network policies or mesh. If you have a network mesh completely, it will capture both your things, and that will help you to solve this.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Sure.
Hello. Hi. So just a comment for the gentleman that just asked a question regarding the communication between Docker containers and Kubernetes cluster. There's actually a product called SUSE Neuvector that actually does that as well. But Rewanth, the question for you. Software supply chain is actually not a well-known term within this region. It's obviously well-known with obviously the Act in the US, the European Commission defining Cyber Resiliency Act and software composition and software bill of materials. What's happening in GCC UAE to increase awareness of open source security, and what are you doing and what are the communities doing to increase that knowledge?
To be honest, I haven't seen much of the communities in the GCC region encouraging this. But since I was working with Emirates NBD, I can just speak about that huge organization. And that might help for the others to follow the same path. And we do most of the things that I have explained here. And since it is a bank, we need to regulate with multiple of these things. And we try to closely follow up with these attacks that happen. We follow the RSS feeds that happen most of the times. So we get all the information. We have our own red team. We have our own blue team. So most of the times what happens is when you go and tell your developer to fix this, they will not be interested to fix it. You need to prove them wrong. And unless an attack happens, no one wants to fix their things, because that's a reactive mechanism. No one wants to be proactive. So what we do is we have our red teams test all our systems occasionally, and we ask them to literally hack them. And once that is done, we show that, and they'll be like, you have to fix it now. There's no way. So that would be one thing you can do. And if your team cannot ask external pen testers to come into your environment, Maybe you can ask your own security team to perform these kind of attacks and show them how risky they are if they're not fixed.
Thank you very much. I'd like to continue the conversation afterwards, but I'll pass the mic on.
Sure.
Awesome. And just on that, I think one of the ways of creating awareness is also having a community-like approach of having people come in and share stuff. So do be on the lookout for a new cloud security chapter that may start soon in the UAE. It's still under wraps, but it's something that is in the works. So do reach out, do connect with us, and then you will know when it's going to happen next. So that's kind of like where we would have folks like Rewanth and other folks who are specialized in security to come in and share practical stuff of how you can do things.